right, let's move on. Question number 2. A study conducted by we should a little ding thing at the bottom. A study conducted by researchers from the University of Chicago, UC Berkeley, Bocconi University, and the University of Cologne reveals that most social media users, especially young individuals, continue using platforms like Instagram and TikTok despite feeling unhappy. The study surveyed 1,000 college students in the US, and it showed that participants would need to be paid $59 on average to deactivate TikTok for a month and $47 to deactivate Instagram if their peers continued to use those platforms. However, users would be willing to pay $28 and $10 respectively if others, including themselves, deactivated TikTok and Instagram. The study suggests a social media trap where users experience negative well-being about the fear of missing out, indicating a strong network effect. Sounds like some serious FOMO for all users. I know I've seen this with my kids. An interesting study, and I think you have to look at the study a few times to really get at what they're talking about, where if it's just me deactivating my social, you'd have to pay me to do it. But if myself and all my friends were doing it, I would actually be willing to pay my friends to deactivate. It's almost like I don't want to miss out on something, so I'd rather nobody has it than just me not have it. Bit of a spin on this question. Duncan, I'm going to ask you first. Out of a platform that you regularly use on social media, if you had to get rid of one tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Instagram.
Really? That's not what I would have thought for you, Duncan.
Well,
Why Instagram?
I feel like all of these apps are kind of similar. I mean, I found this study actually kind of interesting because it's a little bit of a different twist on. I mean, we all know that social media in general creates this FOMO, this fear of missing out. When you see your friends doing various things, you're like, oh, well, I wasn't I invited? I would have liked that. And it doesn't create a really good mental cycle in your head. You kind of go down some weird holes sometimes. And I think, us as a society, we're actually kind of training ourselves to feel bad when we're not being included. And this is why, even in the study, it's basically saying that, people are drawn to these accounts just to make sure they're not missing out on something, which is kind of why I feel like we might have a bit of a societal problem with depression. There's been a lot of studies about that, but this is kind of a spin on that same study to suggest not only is social media causing these kind of feelings with people, but on top of that, people are aware of this and they still stick with it simply because they want to know what their friends are doing. So it's two-pronged there in the sense that it's kind of like a trap. Like, that's really what it is, and that's why I find the study interesting. It's like people don't want to leave it because they still want to know, but at the same time they know that that's hurting them. Is a fascinating problem that, I mean, I think they'll be studying things like this and social media's effect on society for decades. And I think that's also why some of these apps were designed the way they were. They had a lot of psychologists involved with reward systems within people's brains, notifications, etc. Is all really designed to play with how our minds work. And I think in the long term, next 20, 30 years, we'll see social media as a general negative on society. And this study kind of backs that.
I agree, Duncan.
Sorry, was that even answering the question? I'm just realizing.
Well, you answered the question at the very start. You would get rid of Instagram, but I appreciate your candor as to the study itself. I'm a bit surprised, Duncan, that you would be Instagram. But you know what? To each his own.
Well, Ian, I really just I have Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram. And I have Facebook for just Facebook, but
yes. Ian, what are you getting rid of if you had to get rid of one?
Well, although I have accounts for all of them and we use them daily at work, I actually don't go on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook for personal use really anymore anyway. The only one I am on regularly is YouTube, and I am not getting rid of that. But yeah, that and Messenger. I use Messenger to keep in touch with people who perhaps don't live in North America, for example, and it's an easy way to, if they don't have WhatsApp, it's an easy way to get hold of them. But
because you are from Scotland, I know we talked about this last time.
I am.
Despite the whole Loch Ness thing, you are from Scotland.
I am. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Still living the.
I think.
Ruse.
Yeah. Still living the dream back in Scotland, but you are here with us in North America now. And I think, Ian, you mentioned YouTube, and YouTube's an interesting one because as much as it's a social channel, it's very much a search engine at this point too, right? So it
absolutely
goes across both.
Yeah, I think the way I use it is very much as to view. I don't post things on YouTube. I'm not, so in that respect, I guess it's quite different from a lot of the other social medias, and it's more like watching cable, a one-way communication rather than a two-way communication for the way I use it, certainly. So yeah.
Well, I think that's why for me, Instagram was the one I chose, because I don't have any friends that are on TikTok or YouTube or Reddit. Like, that's just the random internet people.
Sure.
Whereas Instagram is my friends, and that's where I experience that FOMO factor. So that's the most logical one for me to get rid of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but I think what Duncan went into a bit deeper, I agree that it's very interesting. This story reminded me a bit of a story I read a year ago or thereabouts, where people were getting rid of their smartphones and going back to dumb phones, like to do a detox, because the constant notifications was just giving them anxiety. And around the time, I remember I turned off a huge number of my notifications, and certainly it does. It's quite freeing.